All right. Let's talk Golden State Warriors, the team that
Let's do
everybody
it.
thought was the shoe-in to win the NBA title last season. They got DeMarcus Cousins, and everybody pretty much just threw their hands up and said, that's it. No need to watch the season because clearly they're going to win. Competitive balance is not a thing. Parity will not be happening in the NBA, and the sky is falling. We know it didn't work out that way. The Toronto Raptors were able to beat a very, very injured Golden State Warriors team, and they've had a number of interesting additions and losses, and at this point, the league is wide open because the Golden State Warriors are no longer the big bad guy in the West that nobody can really get past. It's I still think they're going to be good, but the times they are changing.
No, absolutely. Yeah, this team is going to look very different. So I'm going to run through it real quick, the guys they lost, but it's a lot of guys. Jordan Bell, Andrew Bogut, Quinn Cook, DeMarcus Cousins, Marcus Derrickson, who was one of their two-way guys, Kevin Durant, Andre Iguodala, Jonas Jerebko, Damian Jones, and Sean Livingston. So those guys are all gone. Many of those names, key components to, title teams, Bogut, Durant, Iguodala, even Quinn Cook to some extent. The guys they added and brought in, Alec Burks, Willie Cauley-Stein, Eric Pascal, Jordan Poole, Glenn Robinson III, D'Angelo Russell, Alan Smailagic, and Omari Spellman. So the Warriors, one of the things that they did, so here's the big one, right, was Durant for Russell, the double sign-in trade. What
that nobody saw coming.
That nobody saw coming. Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah. I think we all started to feel real comfortable with Durant to the Nets.
Yeah.
I think that started to become a reality, but then the double sign and trade to get Russell. I know the Minnesota Timberwolves, I had someone from the organization tell me they thought they were going to get D'Angelo Russell, and they believed they were able to line up the deals to clear the cap space, and then they got told, don't do anything yet, which credit to Russell and his camp,
right?
Because we might be doing something different here, and that was so again, credit to them for telling them. So I think that's good news there, because that doesn't always go that way.
So wait, you mean they didn't go ahead and make the moves they needed to make, and then not wind up getting the guy like gosh, where did that come up recently? It sounds so familiar. Marcus Morris. That's right. Sorry,
geez,
San Antonio.
What a mess that is. We'll get into that one when we talk the Spurs, the Knicks, whoever. So the Warriors, but here's the challenge for the Warriors.
Oh, actually, Keith, let me ask you real quick though. You were talking to someone from Minnesota. Do you know what the pieces that they were going to, because that was the big question. Do you happen to know the pieces they were going to move? Was it Wiggins, or were they going to move a combination of Teague and then others?
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Okay.
They for very clear reasons, right? They don't want to talk
they wouldn't, but
about who it was. I think there is a chance, just kind of reading between the lines, I think they might have had a couple different combinations on the line out there that they could have figured out. If they needed to go, the Teague Jang contract combo there seemed to be the more popular one that could have been on the move. But clearly it didn't happen. As an aside, we don't have to get too deep into it, but I still think they should be a player for Chris Paul, because I think if that team wants to be relevant and be a playoff team, which they clearly do, they're capped out for the next few years anyway because of the Towns and Wiggins deals. I would bring in Chris Paul, and if anybody can get kind of Andrew Wiggins to be the best version of himself, I think it could be Chris Paul. But that's a whole aside we can talk about if he hasn't been dealt when we get to the Minnesota one. So the Warriors on the double sign and trade. When you take a player in sign and trade, you become hard capped at the tax apron. That's a number about $6.5 million or so above the luxury tax line. So for this year, that number is $138.9 million. So let's call it $139 million. There. So you become hard capped. What a hard cap team means is you can't go over that number by $1. You can't, not by a single dollar.
Can't even sign vet minimums, nothing.
No, nothing. Yeah, there's no exceptions at work or anything when you are hard capped. You become hard capped via three ways. So obviously, I mentioned you receive a player in sign and trade, and that's important. You receive a player in sign and trade. If you use the biannual exception, or if you use the non-taxpayer amount of the taxpayer equivalent, so about 5.7 million or so of the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. So if you use 5.7 of that, that's what it is. The reason for that is teams that are over the tax apron, they only get the taxpayer mid-level exception.
Right.
They can't do a sign and trade. They can't take a player in a sign and trade, and they lose the biannual exception. So basically, it's to keep an even playing field there. They don't let you build up to be way over the tax and then still do all these other things. So that's how you become hard capped.
Right. And remember, these things that are in here, these aren't rules coming from the NBA. This is the owners in an agreement with the players creating this and creating these rules that are in place. And so this is it's artificial. This is something where the owners are in a lot of ways protecting themselves from themselves, because some of them would just spend as long as they as much as they could.
Absolutely. So why this is important for the Warriors is, we all know, right? They've been a historically expensive team the last few years, especially after adding Kevin Durant. And then when you're basically swapping Kevin Durant at 30 something million for D'Angelo Russell at nearly 30 million, you're going to remain an expensive team. Now they're hard capped. They had to then work some salary cap wizardry to get around that. Part of that was they had to salary dump Andre Iguodala. They traded him to the Memphis Grizzlies, who had a massive trade exception via trading Mike Conley to the Jazz. So that's how they were able to take Iguodala, but they had to pay the Grizzlies to take on Iguodala. They gave up a future first-round pick. It's only very lightly protected, top 4 protected. So that's tough for them.
And if you're watching the video version of this, I'm smiling right now because we know the news right now is that the Grizzlies now want a first in exchange for Iguodala for teams that are now chasing him. Which is, if they get it, 2 firsts amazing for the Grizzlies if they get it.
It's so great. Yeah, it's really kind of just silly at this point what they might pull off. And then it costs them Sean Livingston as well, who had about $2 million on his contract that was guaranteed that they had to waive. So now you're the Warriors. That created the wiggle room. It costs them Jordan Bell, DeMarcus Cousins, Quinn Cook, all his free agents. You can question whether those guys would have been back or not anyway, but they're all gone now. They downgraded slightly in salary from Damian Jones to Amari Spellman in order to bring some guys in. So all these guys that they signed, Burks, Robinson, those guys are on 1-year veteran minimum deals. Cauley-Stein got just slightly above the minimum. It came out of their taxpayer mid-level exception. And then they use the rest of that to give longer than usual contracts to Eric Pascal and Alan Smailagic, who were 2 of their second-round picks. Smailagic had played for their G League team all of last season as a G League player. Right. Pascal's a guy who was borderline first-round talent. A lot of teams really liked him. So that's how they built this team out. So they're going to look really, really different. They've still got Steph Curry left. Klay Thompson did re-sign to a full max deal. Right, yeah, so, terrible to have that start from. But let's remember, Thompson's not going to be there for at least half, if not more, of the season, maybe the entirety of the season. So I think if you're the Warriors, you're really kind of looking very, very different. Just their cap reset completely out of space here, because they're only about 200 million or so under the tax apron at this point. So there's just not a lot of room there for them to do much of anything. So as we get into it, what do you think their starting 5 looks like now, taking Thompson out of the mix, because we know he'll start when healthy, but to start the year, he's not going to be there.
Yeah, so assuming Thompson isn't back till, let's say the All-Star break. Okay, let's say that he comes back around then. I think the Warriors are in tread water mode. I think that you've got a team that's going to be trying to do everything they can to just get into the playoffs, and then hope that if they're healthy at that point, they can go make some noise. I've got them starting Steph Curry at the 1. I think that's clear. I think D'Angelo Russell is there 2, but I think there's a lot of interchangeability between D'Angelo Russell and Steph Curry. I think that when Steph Curry heads to the bench, D'Angelo Russell is clearly their point guard, and that's how they're going to roll there. You're going to have 2 interchangeable guards. At small forward, I think it's going to have to be Alfonso McKinney. I think he's going to be the guy they turn to. Power forward, still going to be Draymond. I do think they run him at center. At times, they'll play small ball. And then at the actual center spot, I like Kevon Looney. I think that's who they're going to stick with there for their starting 5, which, look, overall, it's not a bad starting 5. I mean, look at what they did with KD, rebounding it and flipping that into D'Angelo Russell. I think that was a brilliant move because it keeps them in the mix. Now, look, D'Angelo Russell isn't a great fit long-term, you could argue. because you've got Curry already, because Klay Thompson eventually is going to come back, and then is D'Angelo Russell the kind of defender you really need in that lineup? No, it's not ideal. It's not perfect. It's not like they went and just grabbed somebody out there, the guy that they wanted, and brought him in and said, okay, we're slotting you in for KD, and now everything is good. They just saw a talented player that was available because the Nets were going to part ways with him anyway, and they figured, look, now we've got talent. Maybe eventually they move D'Angelo Russell, but I still like the move for the Golden State Warriors because for the time being, it gives them enough talent to stay in the hunt, even if the fit isn't perfect. And then eventually Klay Thompson's going to come back and they can kind of try to make some waves from there. Look, again, it's not a perfect starting five. It's not a starting five that's going to scare every team in the league or anything like that. But it's good enough, I think, to at least keep them in the mix. And that's commendable at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you, and that's what I think the goal is here, is to stay competitive in the Western Conference, to stay in there so that by the time Thompson gets back, you can be, a team that maybe gets in the playoffs. And if they do, not to use the old cliche, but all of a sudden, if they're the 7th or 8th seed, and you're the 1 or 2 seed, you're like, I don't want to have to deal with this. Like, because we all know, Curry could win a couple games all by himself, just with his shooting and scoring ability. I think Russell is fine for a year. It also gives them, as has been much bandied about, it does give them a very good big contract that can be traded.
Right.
They could bring in 2 guys or another star down the line that fits in better with those guys. Draymond Green's a free agent after the season. My assumption would be they'll do what it takes to retain him as their, kind of their 3-man trio there of Curry, Thompson, and Green is what they're going forward with. I think we might
which
see
they
them
won a title with.
Absolutely,
I mean,
yeah.
You can't write that off.
That's it. And I think you could play those 3 and Russell together quite a bit, because Thompson's big enough to play the 3. There's no reason why he can't play the 3. I do think I'm going to go slightly different in the starting 5. I think they're going to start Cauley Stein.
Okay.
The reason why is I don't think he's a guy who you want to be bringing off the bench. I think you need to have him engaged right away in games. And if you remember for a while when they started Festus Ezeli or even Andrew Bogut, they would make all these efforts to get them involved early in games to make sure you had them going.
And get something
I think that's
them.
what you see. Yeah, and then you go with that. And I think Looney's just so good and comfortable in that backup role coming off the bench that you can leave him there and feel pretty good about that, bringing him off the bench. So I think, overall, I like, this. The depth is where I worry a little. Another injury, that's it. That's going to kill them. So you're kind of looking at it from there. So I've got Looney coming off the bench, then I've got Robinson, Burks, and then it's just whatever number of the young guys step forward. And I know a lot of people are like, well, they'll get somebody on the buyout. Again,
They can't.
This is it. This is pretty much this team, unless they make a trade where you see even money going out and coming back. They are pretty well stocked. This is probably what it's going to be. So with that in mind, they're over under 47.5. That feels like 48 wins. Should be a comfortable playoff team, but in this insanely deep Western Conference, you're probably fighting in the 7 to 10 range is my guess, around 48 wins. What do you think? I'll just tell you my feelings. It's hard because that number feels really, really right.
Yeah, it does.
For me,
and credit to Vegas, right?
Yeah, right. So I'm going to go slightly under.
Okay.
I will go with 46, 47 wins for these guys. That's the respect level I have for Curry, Green, and Steve Kerr. And I do think they will get Thompson back, and I think Russell will be fine there. But I'm going to go slightly under, just the depth of the Western Conference. Too much to go over.
So my take on that, and one of the things that I like to caution people with when they say, and when we're looking at over under, you can't, like, if we're saying the line is 48 wins or 47.5, right? You can't say, oh, the Warriors are going to hit 55 wins without also thinking about who's losing those wins, right? Yep. There's not an infinite number out there, right? You have to think of some other teams that are going to be losing wins as well. So it's not just how good is this Warriors team, it's how good is the competition around them. And if you look at the Western Conference, it's ridiculous. It is so deep and scary. I mean, teams like the Sacramento Kings that were very, very good last season, that's going to be like a bubble playoff team, and I think that they're more talented than that, right? I mean, these are good teams in the West. So I'm actually going to
on that topic, just because this thoughts in my head
sure.
is there's in the Western Conference, I think there's two bad teams,
Yep,
Memphis and Phoenix.
that's it.
I think everybody else could be good. And you could even talk me into if everything breaks right for Phoenix, maybe. No, I'm not. We've
Don't
been
go
saying
there.
that for
Don't do
15 years. So
it.
yeah, so I think they're going to be bad.
Yeah.
But that's it. Everybody else very easily I can be like, yeah, I can see them in the playoffs.
Yep.
Without you don't have to really sell me at all on any of these teams because they've either got one transcendent talent or they've got two or three really good guys and these things. So I interrupted you just as you were about to make your over under pick, but I just had to get the thought in there that gosh, these teams are the West, just it's insane.
Yeah, no, all good. The bottom line is that the Western Conference is going to be beating the hell out of each other all season. That's what's going to happen. And given the fact that the Warriors, I don't love their depth. I think that's an issue. I think that you've got Steph Curry has gotten a little bit banged up in the past. You're incorporating a new center, potentially a starter based on your list in Cauley Stein. I do think you're going to get a lot out of Draymond Green because contract year Draymond. I think that's going to be a thing here. He's going to be a free agent. He's going to be probably the big free agent in the 2020 free agent class. There's not a whole lot out there. I'm going to go under a little bit. I think that this team is going to take a little bit of time to gel. And more so than just, oh, you lost Clay's three-point shooting, you lost KD and everything that he does. I think people tend to look too much at the offensive end. I'm looking at what they lost on the defensive end.
Yeah.
Also losing Sean Livingston, also losing Iguodala. Then you throw in Clay for a good chunk of the season. Then you add in KD on that end of the floor, and you're replacing them with a guy like D'Angelo Russell, who I like a lot. But defense is not his forte at this point, at this stage in his career. So I think they're going to be giving up a decent amount of points, even with a defender like Draymond on the floor. So yeah, I'm going to go the under. I think there's some bumps in the road coming for Golden State, but not ready to dismiss them completely. I still think they're a playoff team.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm still sorting out exactly where I see everybody, playoff team, not a playoff team, but I think they're firmly going to be in the mix again. That's my respect level that I have for those kind of the stars that they have there and the coach. It's just it's tough. And then I wonder with this team, this is where we're going to find out how much did Iguodala mean to them as a voice in the locker room, kind of the guy. He was usually the guy that would pull Draymond Green aside along with Sean Livingston and those kind of things. Klay Thompson did a lot of that on occasion. I think he was kind of like one of the quiet leaders there. And when you're not playing, there's a lot of time you're not even going to be around the team, so I think this is going to be tough. I worry that Draymond's going to feel like it's all on him to make things happen this year, and he's going to really be pushing, and that could get him frustrated and those kind of things. So we'll see. But I'm with you right in the mix for the playoffs. I'm just not. 47.5. I got to feel pretty good that you can get to 50, and 50 wins I think is asking a lot out of this group. Yeah. So all right, I'll go first this time. Thumbs up or thumbs down on just kind of their off season. I'm gonna go with a thumbs down. On this one. Raise it up so you can really see it. My reason is just you lose Kevin Durant. I didn't get it. Durant was hurt. Klay Thompson's not going to be there. That's nobody's fault, even though they re-signed him. I just think they lost too much. And again, I like D'Angelo Russell. I think they did as good as they could do. But when you look at it, I mean, who's getting excited about Alec Burks and Glenn Robinson III? Right? That's not getting, and it's nothing against those guys. They're just, they are ninth, 10th men at best, right? And they got to be this team's like 6th, 7th, 8th guys, in that range. So so we'll see. I think one of the things I'm excited about is we always say I just want to see Steph take 40 shots in a game where he's got it going.
He might have to do that.
Right, we might get to see that happen this year, but yeah, I'm going thumbs down. What about you?
Yeah, so I am at this. Let me do Roman style here. Okay, so at this point, look. I'm conflicted on this because a lot of this isn't their fault, right? The Golden State Warriors, Kevin Durant decided he wanted to be a Brooklyn Net, decided he wanted to team up with Kyrie. That's not something that Golden State did, unless you're buying into the whole they didn't properly address his injury. Maybe you can say that, but otherwise the Golden State Warriors seem to have done everything right, but I still got to go thumbs down on this offseason just based on what they did, and it felt like some panic moves and moving Andre Iguodala and paying with future picks and all that, because I think there is some real downside here. And you look at what's going to happen next summer. Let's say Draymond goes somewhere else. It's not like this team suddenly has a bunch of cap room to play with. Then you're left with no Draymond, and you have a team with Curry, Klay Thompson, and D'Angelo Russell, who maybe they keep, maybe they don't. This team could be headed downward very, very quickly if things don't go their way with the Draymond free agency. There is a way they can bounce back here, but I don't think they've set themselves up all that well for the future. They do have some guys on long-term deals that are pretty cheap, but overall they bounced back a little bit. They did the best that they could, but it's no longer like I'm looking at this team and thinking, oh man, they're set up now and in the future. I'm more worried about what it's going to look like a few years down the road because it could get pretty bad pretty quick.